Caitlin Clark was denied the WNBA All-Star MVP in Chicago, and many fans believe it wasn't just bad luck. According to growing speculation, a decision made behind the scenes right before tip-off may have completely changed her scoring opportunities. In this video, we'll break down why so many people believe Clark never had a fair shot at the award. But that's only part of the story. During that same All-Star weekend, Paige Bueckers and Reese also found themselves at the center of a controversy that had fans calling their actions disrespectful. Stay with us until the end because we'll cover both stories, and you'll also hear what Caitlin Clark reportedly said during the All-Star game after finally reaching her breaking point. If you're a Caitlin Clark fan, leave a comment below and tell us why you think she deserved to be named All-Star MVP. While many other WNBA All-Stars were sharing photos from parties across Chicago on Thursday and Friday night, Caitlin Clark was spending her time very differently. She wasn't relaxing at exclusive events or enjoying rooftop celebrations. Instead, she was moving non-stop from one appearance to another because that was the reality of her All-Star weekend. For most players, All-Star weekend is meant to be a reward after months of hard work. They fly into the host city, participate in a few media sessions, attend league events, enjoy the celebrations, and take a well-earned break. That's the experience most players look forward to, and no one would blame them for slowing down. Caitlin Clark's schedule, however, looked nothing like a vacation. It looked like a packed work schedule with one commitment after another and almost no time to catch her breath. She appeared at State Farm promotional events. She attended Wilson basketball activities. She fulfilled commitments with Nike, and that appearance came with a major headline of its own, the unveiling of a brand new colorway for her signature Nike Caitlin 1 basketball shoe. Think about that for a moment. Many players in the league don't even have a signature shoe, yet Clark was balancing media interviews and product launches during a weekend that many others were treating as time off. Beyond her sponsorship responsibilities, she also participated in charity events, fan meet and greets, and community appearances, greeting supporters with a smile at every stop despite her demanding schedule. Now compare that with the coverage surrounding many of the other All-Stars. The headlines focused on fashion choices, party appearances, and courtside outfits. Community events and fan interactions received far less attention. That doesn't necessarily mean other players weren't involved in meaningful activities, but the spotlight clearly followed Caitlin Clark wherever she went. That difference says a lot about where the public's attention was focused throughout the weekend. The fans made it even more obvious. Long lines formed hours before Clark's scheduled appearances, with people patiently waiting just for a few seconds to take a photo, receive an autograph, or briefly meet one of the biggest stars in women's basketball. The demand extended beyond fan events. Ticket resale prices for the WNBA All-Star Game reportedly climbed from around $71 the previous year, when Clark missed the event because of injury, to approximately $3 once she returned to the All-Star stage. That kind of increase isn't simply about the event itself. It's about one player creating extraordinary demand, and everyone inside the arena understood exactly why. What makes this even more remarkable is that Caitlin Clark wasn't just another player filling her schedule. She's already the most watched and one of the most closely analyzed athletes in women's basketball, with cameras following nearly every move she makes. Even with that level of attention, she accepted every appearance, every interview, every fan event, and every sponsor commitment placed on her calendar. These responsibilities didn't replace her game preparation. They came in addition to it. After spending Friday night meeting fans and fulfilling obligations, she was still expected to step onto the court Saturday night with the same energy, focus, and competitive intensity that made her one of the biggest reasons ticket demand soared in the first place. So imagine where that left Caitlin Clark. She stepped onto the court for the All-Star game after an exhausting weekend spent carrying much of the league's spotlight, handling non-stop appearances, and making time for every fan who patiently waited in those long lines. After everything she poured into the weekend, something unexpected was waiting for her. A decision reportedly made behind closed doors would completely reshape the game she was about to play. Look at the final stat sheet, and at first glance it doesn't seem extraordinary. Clark finished with 17 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds in only 21 minutes. On paper, that's a respectable performance from a player seeing limited minutes. But those numbers don't reflect what you would expect from the player who helped triple ticket prices and pack the arena. The box score only tells part of the story because it overlooks how those points were created and everything she contributed when the ball wasn't even in her hands. Right from the opening minutes, Clark took control of the game. She jumped into a passing lane for an early steal in the first quarter and finished the fast break herself without a moment of hesitation. Soon after, she confidently launched a deep three from logo range as if it were an easy mid-range shot, knocking down attempts that most players wouldn't even think about taking. That aggressive start energized Team Spoon, increased the pace, and helped create a faster, more exciting game. She wasn't simply scoring points. She was dictating the tempo and setting the standard for how the game would be played. On the defensive end, where effort is often limited during an all-star game, Clark continued to compete. She challenged shots, disrupted passing lanes, and fought through screens as though every possession mattered. In a game where many players focus on entertainment rather than defense, that level of intensity quickly stood out. It's exactly the type of effort fans point to when they say, "Caitlin Clark plays basketball the right way." Now compare that performance with Jonquel Jones, who ultimately walked away with the All-Star MVP trophy. Jones delivered an outstanding performance, finishing with 22 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. She also made league history by becoming the first player ever to earn MVP honors in the regular season. The Commissioner's Cup, the WNBA Finals, and the All-Star Game. That's an incredible accomplishment. And no one is arguing that she didn't deserve recognition for an outstanding performance. Based purely on the numbers, the stat sheet made a convincing case. She finished with more points, more rebounds, and more assists, giving voters a clear statistical reason to hand her the MVP award. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. Clark knocked down 5 three-pointers that night, and she was shooting from distances that would have counted as 4-point shots, because the WNBA had originally planned to introduce a 4-point line for the All-Star Game, placing it farther out than the standard 3-point arc as a special feature for the event. It was designed to reward exactly the type of deep shooting range that has become Caitlin Clark's trademark. Then, just before tip-off, the league reportedly removed the 4-point line with very little public explanation for the players or the media covering the game. Think about what that could have meant. Several of Clark's 5 made three-pointers came from beyond where that 4-point line would have been based on the locations of her shots throughout the game. If the rule had remained in place, those baskets would have been worth 4 points instead of 3. Suddenly, her total climbs from 17 points into the low 20s, potentially making her the leading scorer for Team Spoon and dramatically changing the MVP discussion. Now consider the timing of that decision. The production setup had already been completed. The uniforms had already been made. Broadcast graphics had already been designed around the 4-point line, which had been promoted for weeks leading up to the event. Then, just as the player best known for making extremely deep shots stepped onto the court, the league reportedly abandoned the idea without offering a detailed explanation. If the 4-point line had remained, Clark may have finished as the highest scorer on the winning team, and the MVP conversation could have looked completely different. So why was that decision reportedly made at the very last moment after everything had already been prepared? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to leave a like if you're enjoying the video. During Media Day, reporters asked nearly every All-Star the same question. Who do you believe has the best chance to break the WNBA scoring record? One by one, players answered while cameras rolled. But one name repeatedly seemed to be missing from many of the responses. Just 7 days before All-Star Weekend, Caitlin Clark had exploded for 45 points and 10 assists against the Seattle Storm, setting a scoring record and delivering one of the most memorable performances of the season. That game wasn't some distant memory buried in old highlights. It had happened only days earlier and was still being featured across sports shows covering the WNBA. If players were being asked who could eventually break the league's scoring record, Clark's incredible performance from that same week would have been impossible to ignore. And yet, when Paige Bueckers was asked the question, her response completely overlooked Caitlin Clark. Angel Reese was asked the very same thing. Think about what that word actually covers. Fans bought tickets that jumped from around $70 to over $300 just for the chance to see this game live. They took time off work to make the trip. They brought their kids, bought the jerseys, waited in those long lines all weekend for a photo or an autograph. And then some players jogged through the game like it was a scrimmage. Nobody was watching. Like the effort didn't matter because the score doesn't count for anything in the standings. Clark's point was simple. The score might not count, but the money in those fans' pockets was real, and so was the time they gave up to be there. Compare that to how she played the exact same game. She dove for loose balls in an exhibition. She sprinted back on defense when nobody else bothered to get below the free throw line. Full speed, every possession in a music game where the standard move is to jog it out and save your legs for the games that count. That gap between her effort and the effort around her is exactly what she was pointing at when the mics showed up. She didn't stop there either. In a separate moment with Malika Andrews, Clark got asked about the criticism she's taken all year. And she said she wasn't going to sit there and make accusations about who someone is without actually knowing them. That's her answering the character questions that follow her everywhere. The endless takes about her attitude, her personality, whether she's too blunt or too competitive for people's taste. She's not interested in guessing at people's character from a distance, and she's not asking anyone else to guess at hers either. None of this came out of nowhere. Line it, music up with everything else from that weekend. The charity stops, the meet and greets, the sponsor events, the full effort on the court. Even after a schedule that would have worn anyone down, she'd already proven what she thinks she owes the fans. And at halftime, she just said the quiet part out loud that she expects her peers to bring the same thing. Fans online didn't need to think twice about which side they were on. Clips of her comments spread fast. Music, and the reaction leaned hard in her direction with plenty of fans turning. Even harder on the players, who'd spent the weekend dodging her name in interviews and coasting through music the game itself. The math wasn't complicated for anyone watching. One player worked the whole weekend and then competed like it mattered. And a handful of others treated the whole thing like a paid vacation. That's the moment that reframes everything from Thursday to Saturday. Not just a rules change that cost her a shot at MVP. Not just a room full of players who wouldn't say her name. A player standing at halftime saying flat out what the league owes the people who show up and pay for it. Line it all up and the contrast writes music itself. Clark spent her weekend running from charity stops to sponsor booths to fan lines, music, then walked into a game where the league pulled the 4-point line and her own peers wouldn't say her name. Now look at Indiana, Clark, Cunningham, Hull, Boston, and Mitchell are building something real while the jealousy plays out everywhere else. This is why people show up for Clark. Effort, honesty, respect for the game. Show your love for Caitlin in the comments below and tell us why she deserves the MVP. And don't forget to like, music, subscribe, and turn on all notifications as we're bringing you all the action and top stories. Click the video on the screen and we'll see you in the next.